And so they find Jesus in the solitary place that he'd gone to after he had spent a night ministering to people at his Simon Peter's mother-in-law's doorstep, because the crowd had showed up bringing the sick and the infirmed so that Jesus could minister to them, and he did. And into the night, we don't know how long, but it was it said a lot of people had come. And then it says early in the morning, Jesus got up and he went to a solitary place, and that's where the disciples, the ones that he had at that time, found him. They said, all men seek thee. And Jesus simply said, it's time for us to move on. And so they left the city and they went on down the road. And in the early days of Jesus' ministry, as Mark relates it to us, he would go to the synagogues, and there they would allow him to preach. And the more he did this, it finally got to the point to where, first of all, the scribes who were over the synagogues got so jealous of him, they wouldn't let him come in anymore. And also the crowds got so big that the synagogue wouldn't hold him. And so, as Jesus is ministering in a synagogue, a man comes in who is a leper. And the leper, as he sees Jesus, he says, if thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. And Jesus said, I will, be thou clean. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. A person in those days that was a leper, by law, if they are walking down the street and somebody approaches, they must say, unclean, unclean, and they have to yell it out, unclean. In other words, don't come near me because I am unclean. I am a leper. And this had been this man's life. We don't know how long he was a leper, but however long he'd been a leper, this had been his life, that wherever he went, he had to yell out, unclean. Now, he said to Jesus, he said, if thou wilt, you can make me whole. And Jesus said, I will, be thou clean. And then Jesus says to him, he says, go to the priest and allow them to examine you as the law, and but don't tell anybody. And I read that and I said, okay, you got a man that's known by everybody in this community that he's a leper, because every time somebody comes near him, he has to shout, unclean, unclean. And then all of a sudden, he's clean, and he doesn't have to make that proclamation when somebody approaches. I'm thinking they're going to say, what happened? Why are you not saying unclean, unclean? Jesus said, well, don't tell anybody. Well, I'm just thinking in my mind, I don't think that's going to work. And it didn't, because instead of not telling anybody, the scripture says he published it, ablazed it. That's what the scripture says. And after that happened, the crowds just got bigger. And the ministry of Jesus continued to increase in a pretty spectacular way. It's Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.